All right, guys, today we are going to be reacting to the difference between Russian school versus American school, the key differences. Let's jump in and see what's going on.
Greetings, comrades! Today we're going to talk about a place that some people want to go back to all their lives, while others wish they could just forget it, like a bad dream. Yes, today we're going to talk about school. More precisely, how a typical Russian school differs from a typical American one. And no, not just by the fact that the Russian school teaches you to assemble a rifle and the American school teaches you to hide from it. Let's take a look at the whole school system from the very bottom and try to figure out who would win, the American flexibility or the famous Soviet uniformity. To begin with, I apologize to all of my European viewers, but today I will focus on the differences between the educational systems in Russia and in the US. After all, the US is one country while there are 50 in Europe, and each of them has its own specifics of school education. And let's start not with the school system itself, but with the preparation for this very school. It is almost the same for Russia and the United States, only the time frame and some of the details are different. But the main task of preschool institutions both there and here is to prepare the child for the rigors of school life. But no, there is one difference. In Russian preschools you rarely see children younger than 3 years old, because in Russia maternity leave for a parent lasts exactly that long. In the United States, however, one can only dream of such generosity, which is why even very young children are often taken to daycare.
Yep.
So the days of play and fun are over. Elementary school begins. And here's another difference. In the US, children stay in kindergarten for 1 year, and at the age of 6 they go to school for the next 12 years. In Russia, children spend 4 years in kindergarten, from age 3 to 7, and then they go to their first grade, and for 11 years instead of 12. They go to school for the first time and are immediately greeted by the first huge difference of Russian school. September the 1st, the day of knowledge. Yes, imagine, for all Russian school children all over the country, the beginning of each school year always happens on the same day, the first day of autumn. And it is always a large-scale event with flowers, white ribbons, a large gathering at the school stadium, ceremonial speeches, a concert, and the obligatory lap of carrying the first grader with a bell on the shoulder. All in all, a delightful day for kids.
Yeah, right, because we don't even do nothing like that. Wow, this is beyond, what I was expecting. We don't even do nothing like that. This is so foreign to me. My God.
In the US, everything is much more boring. Everyone starts school at different times and they don't make a big deal out of it. Strange people. So, elementary school has started and the children can immediately notice the differences. For example, in Russian school more attention is paid to discipline and order. Therefore, from the very first years, children must sit at their desks strictly and diligently do their homework, without any leeway.
Wow.
Or, for example, most of the first year is devoted to teaching children how to write beautifully. Yes, they should not only learn to write, they also should have beautiful handwriting, and with cursive too. Brrr. You also should get used to the fact that these people...
I remember that meme, man, like, oh man, just look at this picture. This is how Russian just write their
and with cursive too.
Like this. I'm like, what?
You also should get used to the fact that these people around you will have to see them every day for almost 11 years. Yes, in Russia, teachers and class composition don't change every year. Your class teacher will change only once, when you move from primary to secondary school in your 5th grade, but the classmates are likely to remain the same. Although some schools do shuffle the composition of classes, if the school has specialized classes in middle and high schools.
Wow.
Oh yeah, you are used to elementary, middle and high schools being completely different organizations that are located in different places and are not connected to each other in any way? Forget it. You can find both first graders and 11th graders in the hallway of a typical Russian school building. Well, the elementary school classes usually have a separate first floor. So yes, imagine that you are 7 years old. You first come to this grey building on a rainy September day. And you realize that you will have to spend the next eternity here, surrounded by the same faces.
Wow.
Perfect preparation for a life in Russia, isn't it?
I mean, but at least you're building how they call it? I forgot the word. Like a family bonding. You see what I'm saying? You're building family bonding. That's what I think. I think that's what I'm getting from this. I don't know.
And so that you do not forget about the sense of collectivism, we'll give you a school uniform. Yes, that relic of the Soviet Union still exists in Russia. Well, not exactly. It was cancelled, and yours truly went to school in regular everyday clothes for all 11 years. Actually 10, we all skipped the 4th grade back then. The Soviet norm itself was abolished in 1994. But in 2013 it was reintroduced, with some adjustments. Now each school defines its own dress code. This can be a specific set of clothes or general recommendations like white top, black bottom, pants for boys, skirts for girls. By the way, since we started talking about uniforms, the Soviet school uniform is also still alive today, as a rather interesting tradition. This uniform is traditionally worn by graduates at the last bell, as a symbol of farewell to school. But how should I put it? They say goodbye to school at 18, and some girls take this tradition a little too far and modify their uniforms. But tradition is tradition. By the way, back to the fact that each school determines its own dress code. Why did I mention that? Isn't it normal for schools to determine the type of uniforms, the school's class curriculum? No, it's not. The whole idea of Russian/Soviet education is its universalism. Even the menus in school cafeterias are usually almost the same. So forget about
like the same, like every day it's the same, like you eat the same thing every day.
the freedom to choose a school program. The entire program from grade 1 to 11 is firmly established by the Ministry of Education and is strictly regulated. Therefore, if in Kamchatka they study Gogol in the second half of 6th grade, then with a 99% probability it is studied by children of 6th grade in Kaliningrad at the same moment. There are exceptions, but they are very few and mostly happen closer to high school and in specialized institutions. This has advantages. The quality of education does not depend so much on the particular teacher a child gets. But there are also disadvantages. It severely affects the individual development of students. Everything is not great with individual development in Russian schools. Somehow it became a custom that all creative development was given to additional activities, numerous clubs and hobby groups. Some of them are organized within schools, after school hours, but many of them are held outside of school itself. School electives, journalism, filmmaking, modern arts. No, we don't do that here. And how do they evaluate the performance of students in Russian schools? With annual final tests? No, not really. Students simply get their yearly average grades in their subjects, and if they don't fail them all, which is quite a hard thing to do, then they move on to the next year. The really important exams are only those at the end of the 9th grade, that's the end of the middle school, and at the end of 11th grade. The first is called the State Final Attestation, the second is the Unified State Exam. After passing the final attestation, children are free to decide where they want to go next, continue with high school or go to colleges and technical schools, which provide
really?
specialized technical and
So you can go to high school or decide to go to college? That's kind of weird.
vocational education and are more focused on a variety of practical professions. But if you want to go to university, be kind enough to sit through the 10th and 11th grades and pass the USE with high marks. The USE is the centerpiece of the entire Russian education system nowadays.
Wow.
A unified test exam in several subjects, by the results of which the student receives his scores. Then with these scores he applies to the university of his choice, And they decide whether to accept him for free if he did great, to accept him on a commercial basis if he did okay, or not to accept him at all. It's obvious that it is very difficult to enter the most prestigious universities, and it is necessary to pass the exams almost perfectly. So all 10th and 11th grades are actually devoted purely to preparation for
I remember
these
those pencils.
final
Wow.
tests. Which
I remember those pencils, man. Wow. The one that you could like click and change the color. Wow. Those not pencil, pen.
by the way, very much hits the overall level of education, because children simply ignore those subjects that they do not need, preparing themselves only for those 3 or 4 ones that are important for them. By the way, this is where the American system would be useful. A student being able to just choose the subjects that are interesting to him. But no, Russian schools do not provide this option. Everything is decided for you and you are obliged to attend all classes. There is no flexible schedule. By the way, the same applies to physical education, for example. All children study at the same time according to the same program. If you're interested in football, real one, swimming or something else, then kindly go to the sports club elsewhere and do it there. That's why in Russia physical education lessons for many people are just a very tedious chore. A chore that many people try to avoid by hook or by crook.
What the?
Well, what other specifics do Russian
Oh,
schools
yeah.
have? Let's talk
was
about
that?
inclusivity, and it's not so great here. The fact is
What
that
was
if a
that?
child has some serious health problems, they just won't be accepted into a regular school. Yeah, that's it, it's absolutely legal. Either homeschooling or special schools for children with disabilities. But on the other hand, there is some freedom in what school you may send your child to. Public schools are funded from the state budget, so you can always send your child to almost any school in your city, if you think they have better teachers or good extra classes. Schools that teach children using advanced programs are usually called gymnasiums or lyceums. It is harder to get into them, even the youngest of children must pass some sort of entrance tests. And also you can actually change schools, whenever you want. There are also private schools, but there are not a lot of them, and they are mostly very expensive.
Yeah, that's
The
the.
grading system
Yeah, private schools are expensive everywhere, folks. Not even in Russia. United States, they're completely expensive, very expensive. So
is also a little different. It is not even that it's point-based, 1 point is terrible, 5 points is excellent, but that it is also very much public. All of your grades for all tests and assignments are announced in front of the class, and everyone can see their deskmates' grades. And this sometimes causes problems. Many parents are just obsessed with their children's performance, and when you consider that schools assign a lot of homework, it can cause problems at home for kids whose parents are perfectionists. Believe me, the phrase "but your classmate Masha is such a smart girl, she gets perfect marks, unlike you," has been heard by every single Russian. There are almost no school buses in Russia.
Really?
They are only used for children from remote villages
really, so you guys don't have no school buses? Oh, interesting.
and settlements. Either you get to school on foot or by public transport. Classes at school last 45 minutes with 10 to 20 minute breaks between each one. Well, there are slight differences in the programs itself too. In general, children begin to be burdened with more difficult subjects earlier. Foreign languages are studied since elementary school, biology since 5th grade, chemistry and physics since 7th. With the beginning of middle school, many students learn 2 foreign languages
Wow.
at once. The most popular, of course, is English. By the way, one of my first memories is when I was 4 or 5 years old and our tutor taught us that a crocodile toy is a crocodile. So English is sometimes taught almost from kindergarten, and somehow most Russians, including me, are still bad at it. Imagine! French and German are less popular and other languages are rarely taught, but the
Well, that means that they are being practical. This is being practical, folks. I mean, you're learning English because it's one of the main languages that we are currently using, right? That can change. You can go to Chinese, Mandarin, or then Spanish. Spanish is a very well-known language as well. So you're just trying to, balance your potatoes kind of thing,
Can be Italian, Spanish or Chinese.
There we go.
By the way, if you were
The
born
more
in
languages you learn, the smarter you're gonna become. So might as well get a couple more.
some Republican side of Russia, you will get a surprise. Two kinds of native language lessons at once, Russian and the other official language of your republic. I haven't experienced it myself, but I think it's pretty cool. It prevents people from forgetting their roots. In general, this is probably where the differences in educational characteristics end. In short, the Russian school is much more formalized and standardized than the American one.
I agree with that.
This probably has a negative effect on the individual qualities of students, but their overall level of knowledge of subjects is more consistent and high. Russian education relies on an erudite person, and an American stands for narrow specialists. Of course, it would be nice to combine these two approaches and create an ideal educational system for children, but we'll understand that this is not realistic.
Well, we have to figure out, right? We have to see whether or not this is something that can be, implemented. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next one. I'm out.